Everyone today is moving, scrolling endlessly, hustling without pause, optimizing every corner of life. From the outside, it looks like ambition. From the inside, it often feels like quiet exhaustion. We live in a culture that confuses motion with progress. If you slow down, you're told you're falling behind. If you stop chasing, people assume you've lost your drive. But what if the opposite is true? What if most people aren't stuck because they do too little dash, but because they do too much of what doesn't actually matter? Busyness has become a socially accepted escape. As long as you're busy, no one questions your direction, not even you. Action feels productive, even when it's aimless. Because stopping is uncomfortable. When the noise fades, questions appear. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to impress? And what am I afraid will surface if I stop running? Chasing gives the illusion of control. It keeps doubt quiet. It keeps emptiness buried under schedules and goals. That's why constant motion feels safe. Ancient philosophies warned us about this long before modern life accelerated. The Stoics believed peace comes not from gaining more, but from needing less. Taoism taught that forcing life creates resistance, while alignment creates flow. Zen emphasized stillness, not as escape, but as clarity. They all pointed to the same truth. Becoming more does not come from adding more. It comes from removing what is unnecessary. Modern life does the opposite. We add goals without questioning them. We add habits without removing distractions. We chase outcomes instead of understanding ourselves. And then we wonder why achievement feels hollow. Doing less is not giving up. It's choosing deliberately. A sculptor doesn't create by adding stone. They create by removing everything that isn't the statue. Your life works the same way. The problem is not that you want more. The problem is that you're chasing without asking where the road leads. And until that question is faced, no amount of effort will ever feel like enough. Stillness scares people, not because it's empty, but because it reveals what noise has been hiding. When life finally slows down, there's no distraction left to blame, no urgency to hide behind, no next task to escape into. And that's exactly why stillness is powerful. In stillness, patterns become visible. You notice which thoughts return again and again, which desires feel forced, which goals no longer feel like yours. Most people never reach this point. They stay in motion, not because they're progressing, but because stopping would force them to look. Modern culture treats stillness as weakness. If you pause, you're unmotivated. If you rest, you're falling behind. If you reflect, you're overthinking. But every meaningful tradition understood the opposite. Warriors rested between battles. Philosophers withdrew to think clearly. Artists stepped away from noise to create something real. Stillness was never passive. It was strategic. Because without stillness, there is no direction, only reaction. When you're constantly chasing, your decisions are external. You react to trends. You respond to pressure. You move because something pushes you. Stillness returns agency. In silence, you stop asking, "What should I do next?" and start asking, "What actually deserves my energy?" That shift changes everything. You begin to see how much of your effort is wasted on maintaining appearances. How much time is spent proving rather than building. How often movement replaces meaning. Stillness exposes the cost of chasing. And once you see that cost clearly, your priorities change. Doing less doesn't mean life becomes smaller. It becomes sharper. You stop scattering attention. You stop overcommitting. You stop saying yes out of fear. Instead, you move with intention. Few things, clear reasons, no unnecessary force. This is why people who embrace stillness often appear calmer, yet more effective. They don't rush, but they arrive. They don't chase, but they progress. Because their energy isn't leaking in every direction. Stillness doesn't remove ambition. It refines it. It strips away noise until only what matters remains. And once you know what matters, action becomes simple. Not easy, but clear. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the foundation of meaningful movement. Without it, effort is blind. With it, even small actions carry weight. Once you experience stillness, something shifts. You begin to notice how much of life is optional and how little of it is essential. Most people don't suffer because they lack opportunity. They suffer because they accept too many of them. Too many goals, too many commitments, too many identities to maintain. Modern life rewards expansion, more projects, more connections, more visibility. But depth does not come from expansion. It comes from reduction. Choosing less is uncomfortable at first. It feels like closing doors. It feels like missing out. But what you're really doing is reclaiming focus. Every yes costs something. Not just time, but energy, clarity, presence. When you choose less, you stop fragmenting yourself. Your attention stays intact. Your effort compounds instead of dispersing. This is why people who do fewer things often move further. They're not smarter. They're not luckier. They're selective. Depth requires commitment, and commitment requires limits. You can't live deeply while being everywhere. You can't build meaning while constantly switching direction. Chasing creates breadth without substance. Choosing creates substance with fewer moves. This applies to work, relationships, even self-improvement. Not every habit improves you. Not every opportunity aligns with you. Not every version of growth is actually growth. Some forms of progress are just noise in disguise. Living deeper means asking harder questions. Does this actually matter in 5 years? Does this align with who I'm becoming or who I'm trying to impress? Is this effort building something real or just keeping me busy? These questions don't simplify life overnight, but they begin to filter it. Slowly, unnecessary weight falls away. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop proving. You stop chasing approval that never satisfies. And something unexpected happens. With less effort, you feel more grounded. With fewer goals, you feel more direction. With reduced noise, you hear yourself again. This is not minimalism as an aesthetic. It's minimalism as clarity. Choosing less is not about shrinking your life. It's about removing what dilutes it. Because when you stop chasing everything, what remains finally has space to grow. There's a difference between effort and force. Most people don't notice it because they've been taught to equate struggle with progress. If it's hard, it must be working. If it hurts, it must be meaningful. But force is not the same as effort. Force comes from fear. Fear of falling behind. Fear of being irrelevant. Fear of not being enough. Effort comes from clarity. When you're aligned, action feels focused. When you're chasing, action feels heavy. Force burns energy without direction. Effort channels energy with intention. This is why chasing is exhausting. You're constantly pushing against life instead of moving with it. Ancient philosophies described this precisely. Taoism called it Wu Wei, action without force. Not passivity, but natural movement. A river doesn't struggle to flow, it follows gravity. When your actions align with your values, movement stops feeling like resistance. Most burnout doesn't come from working too much. It comes from working against yourself, doing things you don't believe in, pursuing goals that don't fit, maintaining momentum out of obligation rather than purpose. Effort without force requires honesty. It asks you to admit when something no longer works, to stop pushing doors that refuse to open, to let go of paths chosen by fear rather than intention. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means friction becomes meaningful. There will still be discipline. There will still be discomfort. But it will be clean, not draining. You stop overcompensating. You stop proving. You stop accelerating just to feel alive. Instead, you move steadily. Few actions, clear direction, no wasted pressure. People often mistake this for lack of ambition. In reality, it's ambition refined. Because when you stop forcing outcomes, you gain the ability to sustain progress. Force creates short bursts. Effort creates longevity. And in a world obsessed with speed, the ability to move calmly and consistently becomes a quiet advantage. You don't need to chase harder. You need to move truer. When effort replaces force, progress stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like a path. At some point, chasing stops working. Not because you failed, but because you've outgrown it. What once pushed you forward now pulls you apart. What once motivated you now drains you. This is the moment most people ignore. They double down. They push harder. They confuse persistence with wisdom. But growth is not always about adding more. Sometimes it's about letting go. Letting go of goals that no longer fit. Letting go of identities built to impress. Letting go of timelines that were never yours. This is where becoming more actually begins. When you release unnecessary pressure, space appears. Space to think clearly. Space to act intentionally. Space to live rather than perform. Letting go feels risky because it removes certainty. But chasing was never certainty. It was control disguised as motion. When you stop chasing, you don't stop moving. You stop running blindly. Your actions slow down, but they land deeper. Your focus narrows, but your impact grows. Your life becomes quieter, but more honest. You begin to measure progress differently, not by speed, but by alignment. Not by volume, but by depth. Not by approval, but by inner stability. This shift changes everything. You stop reacting to every opportunity. You stop proving your worth through exhaustion. You stop outsourcing meaning to future achievements. Instead, you build a life that can be sustained. Few commitments, clear values, enough energy to show up fully. Becoming more does not mean becoming louder, faster, or busier. It means becoming truer. And the irony is this: the moment you stop chasing who you think you should be, you finally make room for who you already are. That is the quiet power of doing less, not as retreat, but as return.